Hello,
Hi.
everyone. Happy Wine Wednesday.
Happy Wine Wednesday from us and our Christmas mugs.
Yeah, well,
festive.
yours is Christmas, but
Yeah.
I didn't have another one.
It's
so
okay. Yours is pretty too.
It's also pretty. It has a G for
there you
gaming.
go.
Here for it. Yeah, you guys, we had so much fun recording our last pod in person.
We did.
That we couldn't resist doing it again.
Yes. So you have us again in person this week.
I think we're better in person, just a
Yeah.
personal preference. But
I think so too. I think that Jenny needs to get an apartment in New York City, and I have to get a place here in Austin, so we could just travel back and forth and just film a bunch.
I mean,
together.
I'm completely here for that. Love both cities, plus want a cash flowing investment.
Yeah,
So.
exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. This episode is very near and dear to both of our hearts.
Mhm.
And although for us it is pre-Thanksgiving, you guys will actually not gain access to this until after Thanksgiving. But I still think that it's definitely very pertinent throughout the entire holiday season. We're going to be talking to you guys about body image and how to make sure that you're shaping a positive narrative. I feel like this is something that is really timely, because of where we're at in the year, but also just because women specifically, especially if you're of the millennial varietal, have to deal with this a ton. Just all the time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we were brought up with it, and just how it's affected, I know me personally and how I view it.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad programming,
Yeah.
And a lot of things that we really need to unlearn. Mm-hmm. So we'll get into that. We've got a lot of really exciting insight to share with you guys.
Yes.
But before that, we're going to get into the wine. We're drinking out of coffee cups today. Please don't judge us. I wouldn't advise that. You're not going to maximize the flavor. But we are drinking a Tokai ferment today, which is a huge departure from what we would normally drink. This is actually typically a dessert wine, but they did this in a dry style. So they do that every once in a while with Tokai and ferment. And this one is a really, really dry expression, but it's really rich as well. It's really mineral driven. And this one is actually from Hungarian wine country. Mm-hmm. So we're going a little bit all over the world, but It was recently acquired by a French family that was already established in the Pomerol area of Bordeaux. And if you are a Bordeaux drinker, then you know that Pomerol is one of the best types of, or best regions for Bordeaux. So basically they know what they're doing. And this one is going to be really balanced. It's going to have a little bit of honeysuckle notes. And y'all know me, I love white Burgundy. I love this because it's reminiscent of white Burgundy, but a fraction of the price. I don't know how much this guy is. I know it's under 20. But yeah, definitely look into this one. It's also, because it's a little bit richer, it's really good for if you don't want to drink a big heavy red wine after a meal. So I would say it's good for after Thanksgiving, but y'all, we're already post Thanksgiving for you guys. So for Christmas.
Yes, for Christmas, pick this up. And I just love the bottle.
And it's cute. And it's a screw top that's actually yummy. Okay. So
yeah, yay for that.
We love that. We love that.
All right, let's get into the Rose and Thorn. You want to go first?
Sure. So my rose this week is obviously that you're here, and we were able to get through so much. And we also had our Forefront leadership conference. So there was a lot of meetings and a lot of really good collaborating that was going on. My thorn is that whenever everyone's in town, as much as I love it, I just get so behind on work. This weekend's going to be a doozy, just because of all the things I have to catch up on.
Yeah.
What about you?
And I literally have the exact same rose and thorn. So obviously I am here in Austin with Jenny and the other Forefront fam. And I also went to a conference in New York City last week, which was really fun. It was about women advisors. So it was really nice, networking with other female advisors in the New York area. And then my thorn, like Jenny was saying, so I've had so many family members and friends visiting me this past week, and then the conference, coming to Austin, that I feel like I am so behind with work, and I hate that.
Yeah.
So it's I have to spend the whole weekend probably catching up, but it's okay. I'll take that time for quality time like this.
Yeah, it's the best part.
Yeah.
But I kind of piggybacking off of that, I feel like what we're talking about this week with body image, you guys know this time of year is bananas, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't care what you do for work. I don't care how big your family is. Like, everybody is in like a full-on sprint right now to get all the things that need to get done for the year and then spend the time that they need to with their family. And, they always say that you shouldn't give advice to people until you have come out the other side and healed from whatever it is and you're actually situated to give advice.
Right.
And I agree with that in some fronts, but I also really want to talk about body image because I think there's a lot of toxic information on the web about people being like unfazed by it or it no longer bothering them or them completely flipping the script. And I do feel like I'm in a space in my life right now where I have come so far with my body image that I can actually speak to you guys from a place of authority on what has helped me. But anybody who tells you that they have, as a woman, especially if they're a millennial woman, that they have completely healed themselves of the just the stress and the qualms that is body image as a woman, like they're full of shit. Like you can do a lot of things in your life to make sure that you're feeling the best that you can about it and that you're hedging against a lot of the negative tropes that happen, especially this time of year. But at the end of the day, like there's a reason why this is such a hot button issue and so many people suffer from it. It is so freaking ingrained in our culture.
It really is. Jenny and I were actually talking about, growing up in the 90s. We're both, millennials, born in the 90s. And we were talking about how like the society was so obsessed with like being skinny and having the perfect body.
Yep.
And how that's affected us growing up and still to this day. I know that, it's always like in the back of my mind, you want to stay thin, have the perfect image. And I think a lot of that comes from growing up in that time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, honestly, you guys, your weight is literally the least interesting thing about you.
Right.
Truly. And it took me so long to not wrap my entire self-worth into how little I was.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys I feel like it's funny. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen like that TikTok craze where Gen Z people make fun of millennials about how obsessed we are about our weight and about body image because they just don't get it. Because fortunately for them, they had a lot more representation and exposure to normal bodies than we did.
Right.
Like if you go back to our heyday when we were like prepubescent children and very impressionable young girls, like that was like the heroin or cocaine thin. I don't know what they used to call it, but something along those lines where it's just like you had to be like super wafy.
Right. Yeah.
Jessica Simpson back in the day, I think she was like a size 4 or a size 6. And they were saying like it was devastating or a travesty what had happened to her body. Right. And she was just like drug through the mud.
Mm-hmm.
And like they used to have like exposés and specials on magazines, which used to be a thing. Magazines were a huge deal back in the day.
Yeah.
Where they would like close up and zoom in on the camera angle to people's cellulite.
Yeah. Do you remember when they actually like would like circle things that were like wrong with people's bodies, like in like newspapers and magazines? Like that's so like I don't understand it at all. It like makes 100%. Me so angry.
Well, it's funny because like it was normal for us. Right. And like now we've learned so much and we've come so far as a culture. We still have a long way to go. But it's like we look back at that and we're like, that is archaic. Mm-hmm. Like, how did we get to this space? Right. And it's like, I was so desensitized to it. Like we actually just recently were watching a movie and they were like obsessed with body image. And they were obsessed with like talking about how fat people were. And I watched this movie years and years ago and I never caught on to it. And now I'm like, it's the only thing I can hear.
Yeah. There were probably 30 references, like not even joking,
to how fat somebody was. Yeah. And it's like you watch it then and you're so desensitized to it. And now I'm so grateful for how far we've come with if you go through a magazine, if you go online, if you go on social media, you will see more representation of normal bodies.
Yes.
Than you ever have before. Yeah. Having said that, caveat, this issue has not been eradicated. There are still super thin people who are getting on there and like talking about how sexy it is. There's trolls all over the internet about how there's an ideal body and you have to be that. Right. And you know, there's a lot of things that we have to shift in our perception of what is beautiful based on what your upbringing is and what you've been exposed to in your life. But we just wanted to take some time to give you guys some tips on like what has been helpful to us,
right,
and how we have helped to reframe that narrative in our brain. I wouldn't say that I'm healed, but I definitely think that I'm a lot better.
I am a lot better. I don't know actually if I'll ever like fully be healed, but I know I am a lot better in like a positive space than when I was a child, or even like in college. And we want to give you some tips on how to promote body positivity, and also like just be kind to yourself and others.
You got to, you guys. Like, you live in your head at all times, and if you're having this constant like doomsday dread about the holidays and all the food that you're going to eat and what it's going to do to your body, like, you have to live with that 24/7, all of that programming. And it just makes a time that's supposed to be really joyous really miserable. Especially if you're going to eat the food anyway. Right. Because then it's like you're not even enjoying it, And it's like, especially if you're a woman, your body is supposed to fluctuate. And I think for me, understanding that was the first step. And then, there's so many women out there that talk about like mindful eating. And while I think that's great in theory, at the end of the day, like, you have to figure out what works for you. You know what foods make you feel good. And if you want to restrict, like, that's fine. But like, for me, it's never been effective to categorically take whole groups of food and just not eat them if I enjoy them just for no reason.
Right.
Because then that leads to binging later on.
Exactly. Everything in moderation.
Everything in
preach.
Everything in moderation. And I think, and I'll share you a little personal anecdote about myself. I grew up really heavy, you guys. Like, I weighed over 250 pounds when I was young. And at the time, when you're young, you're not really like ingrained in what it actually means to be different, because you're just yourself. And, you just go about your daily life, and then kids start to make fun of you and you're like, oh, I am different. And then you start to look to these pieces of authority. At the time it was magazines, now it's social media, what have you. Right. And you're like, man, I don't look like these people. And then you start to doubt yourself. And what really breaks my heart about it for women is I feel like we put so much of our development into who we are as people on hold because we're so caught up on how we look, our physical appearances. And our culture is set up that way. It's not our fault. It's constantly thrown in our face. But think of all the things that you could have been developing in your adolescence that would have been so much more interesting than like dreading how you don't look like the girls next to you, how you don't like the girls that you see on TV. And I went through like over a decade, I went through a binge purge cycle where I would get really skinny and then I would gain weight and I would beat myself up and I would stay home from social engagements, even during the holiday season, because I was like, well, I don't want to get fat. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
just like missing out on life.
Totally insane. Yeah. And now I finally have gotten to a place where I don't restrict myself. If I want to eat something, I will eat it. And you know what? Even if I gain weight, it's okay. I'm never going to gain as much weight as when I was restricting it, because then I would binge it later. And I think that just understanding that it's okay for our bodies to change, because they're going to. Our hormones are differently. We are meant to be a little bit heavier than our male counterparts. Okay. And I think that so many people just forget about how harmful it is to continue that narrative in your head. There are so many things that can crop up as a result of that. Eating disorders, anorexia, binge eating, what have you. And I suffered for years because I was so big when I was a kid. I suffered from body dysmorphia. I would get thinner and thinner and thinner, and then I would still continue to think that I was fat. And that's
same for me.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's nonsensical, you guys. Like, and you have to think about how you are with your best friends, right? And the people that you care about. Would you ever talk to your best friends the way that you talk to yourself when you're coming down on yourself about your body image?
No. And we're always like so hard on ourselves, especially. But I always like to think about it, like, take a step back. And if I'm like being hard on myself, like, think like, like you said, like, would I say that to one of my friends or, someone close to me? Like, no, like, so I need to stop being so hard on myself. I kind of have the same experience as Jenny when I was younger, but I was heavy growing up. And I remember I used to get like bullied almost bullied, like with kids saying like, oh, like, you're big and blah, blah, blah. And I remember I actually went through a period where I actually like would throw away my lunches, and I didn't even like realize I was doing it. And I remember my mom like would actually like ask my friends like if I was eating, because I got so skinny because I would just stop eating, like just like with everybody saying everything. So it's real. And a lot of women struggle with it. I feel like everyone has their own story.
So many women, and especially when we're young like that,
Yeah.
like, Michelle was malnourishing herself because of what somebody said.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any sense. And I'm here to tell you that I've gone through a lot of therapy regarding this. And one of the things that I learned was all of that binge purging, and especially the restricting, where you were eating very little calories on a day in and day out basis, that permanently damages your metabolism.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go back and do even more work to get to just normal.
Yeah.
Because your body is underfed.
Right.
And that is terrible for you.
Yeah.
And the end of the day, you guys, food is fuel. We
is.
need it to survive. And it's meant to be social, and it's meant to be fun. And during the holidays, it's okay. It's okay to do this. We're going to indulge a little bit more. And I want you to feel okay doing that, because if you don't, you're just going to make yourself a lot more miserable, and you're not going to be able to enjoy the parties that you're going to and the people that you're around. And especially for traveling, so much of travel is experienced through cuisine.
Yeah.
And I love that. So why would I ever want to take that away from myself? Even if there's, and then the whole, you have to earn your food. Is astronomical. You should move your body because you want to, because it makes you feel good, and because it adds longevity to your life. Not because you ate something that you shouldn't have.
Right.
Literally makes no sense.
Yeah.
And then we just want to encourage you guys. We're not going to give you stupid tips that people do. That's like, drink a smoothie before you go to a party, drink lots of water. Like, none of that stuff works.
Right.
At the end of the day, you know what makes your body feel good. If you're going to go like through a period of time where you like during the holidays, for example, for me, I know I have a lot of social engagements, so I will drink a lot more wine than I normally would. And so when that happens, I usually do a reset after. Right. I don't do the dry January. I don't like to set parameters like that on myself, but I know when I've had too much wine too many days in a row, how my body feels. So I will discern at that point, how long does this reset need to be? And I don't even ever really set a time frame on it. I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to eat a lot of vegetables, drink a lot of water. I'm not going to drink for a few days. I just feel malnourished and I want to get back to feeling better. Right. And I think we all like have like those seasons where, we have to like teach ourselves that it's okay. Like, it's okay if we have that extra glass of wine or eat that, indulgent meal. But then we know like the next week, like, okay, maybe I won't indulge so much. It's all about, kind of balancing. It's like a balancing act. Yeah. You have to find out what works for you. And there is no blueprint. I mean, there's a whole freaking industry on finding a blueprint. Yeah. And let me tell you, do not succumb to that, because your body's physiology is different than anyone's. Exactly. And you are the only person that knows what makes you feel good and what makes you feel bad. And another thing that we've touched on a little bit, but I think it's really, really important going into the holiday season, is you're going to have a lot more downtime, especially when you're with your family, than you normally would. And during those times, I know a lot of us like to get on our phones and scroll through Instagram and see what's going on in social media. And I just want to remind you, I know we all know this, but for some reason we forget when we're looking at our phones. People learn how to pose to make their bodies look amazing. Yes. Okay. Exactly. And other people have good bodies. So it is not to detract from that. People work really hard to have beautiful bodies, and we all have beautiful bodies. But please, for the love of God, stop comparing yourself to these like Instagram models who literally train themselves to contort their body in a manner that makes them look the way that they want to. Right. Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy. Truly. Yeah. It's been a common theme, I think, in our last few podcasts, but it is so true. I know it is very hard, because I mean, I do it personally. Like, I know if I'm sitting there, I'm like looking through everything. Oh, like, I wish I could be that, thin, or I wish I could be having that much fun. I wish I was, on a yacht in Greece. Don't we all, Michelle? Exactly. Don't we all? But I just have to remind myself, a lot of the times, like, people are just posting like highlights of their life.
and you don't really see the behind the scenes and the downtimes.
100%. And I think you guys, the other thing that I want to encourage you to do is when you're with your friends and your family, especially if they're women, and I know that this affects men too, but especially if they're women and you hear them being really mean to themselves, please give them a gentle nudge and a gentle reminder that they really need to flip that script and they need to be kinder to themselves. I've got a couple of friends that are really weight obsessed and it triggers me sometimes and I have to remove myself from the situation or say, hey, it really bothers me that you always talk about that because at the end of the day, as I mentioned at the open of this podcast, your weight truly is the least interesting thing about you. And all of my relationships, especially with my girlfriends, I love them for who they are, not because of the way they look. And you have to remind them that is why they are in your lives. Right. And that is what makes them interesting. And that is what makes them unique. And even if they're saying these things out loud, like you can speak things into existence. You can speak insecurity into existence if you keep repeating the same narrative over and over and over again. So this really it kind of goes back to what we've talked about before with Carol Dweck's mindset. You really need to shift into thinking that you are beautiful, that you are strong, that you are capable, that your body is able to move, that you are able to get up every single morning and do the things that you love and go on walks and go to work. Like, who cares if you gain 5 or 10 pounds? I'm here to tell you my entire life, since I lost the initial weight, I have fluctuated 5 to 15 pounds and that's okay.
Yeah, same here. It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. And there are times when I'm low and I'm like, oh God, I don't feel good. And that's okay as well. But I never feel less worthy because I've gained a few pounds. And one of my main goals in life is honestly to get women to feel the same way because there's so many, when I was able to kind of flip that switch in my brain, it unlocked so much more opportunity for me to be able to do other things that are important to me. You guys have no idea how much this obsession, especially if you're a millennial woman, is taking up mind share to do other things that you could be doing, that you could excel at, that you could love.
Exactly. I think it also leads to other like mental health issues, like from that obsession, being down on yourself, it leads into anxiety and depression.
100%. And all of these things are not something that can be cured overnight. But we can take active steps every single day to put ourselves in a better position and a better mindset. Even if it's just, you know what, tonight I'm not going to think about it, and then build upon it and build upon it and build upon it and really just try to be present and enjoy your friends and your family and the food and the holidays. Like, my God, I love Christmas cookies. I can't imagine if I didn't get to eat those.
Right. Exactly. And also I want to say, I know that eating disorders and things like it is a disease, and, also that stigma, I think we promoted like last week about how to break that stigma. It also serves here. Like, it's also okay to go speak to someone if you need to, and especially if it's affecting your mental health and your physical self.
100%. You guys do not have shame around this. There is you are not messed up because you can't stop thinking about this. There's a reason. It is ingrained in our culture.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you can't take that knowledge and be proactive with it and do what you can to deprogram it. I know it's something I try to work on day in and day out. And we're definitely here for you guys as a resource and a community. If you guys want to talk to anyone or want to give tips and tricks on what's been helpful for you on your journey, I think that it's something that we should talk about more without giving stupid diet tips.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well,
yeah.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
We hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving and were able to spend time with your family. If you gave yourself a hard time from a body image perspective for Thanksgiving, make a promise to yourself you're not going to do it for Christmas.
So we will see you all next week. Enjoy the holiday season and cheers.